This is a wreath decoration. I've created one for the bride, Sophia, and I'm going to make another one for her groom, Ben. So I'm going to show you how it's done. The first step is picking the letter of your bride and groom, and here's Ben, so I'm going to use the letter B. I printed out a block letter B that I'm going to adhere to a piece of corrugated cardboard, something everybody has. Now, when I have my letter all cut out and ready to go, we're going to attach moss to it. So I have this sheet moss, which is a thin layer of moss. It's actually preserved so it will stay green. So you can see what I'm doing here is just wiping off any kind of loose dirt that might be attached to it, just kind of cleaning it up a little bit, shake it off, and then I'm going to lay it on this surface here. I'm going to use a really tacky white glue, and I like to go right from the bottle and really blob it on. Because the moss is such a textured material, you want to make sure that the letter adheres well. So I'm just going to go like that, get a lot of glue on there, and then with a paintbrush just kind of smooth it out. It's okay to be sloppy because we're going to be trimming around it to clean up the moss afterwards. So you can see blobbing it on. There's a lot extra there. I kind of love these messy projects. They're fun. So here, you see, looks pretty good to me. Looks pretty covered. Take that, flip it, and I'm placing it face down onto the back side of that piece of moss that I cleaned off, and just pressing it in. Before I put this aside and to let it dry, I'm just going to add a little bit more glue around the outside of the letter and the inside holes here, just so that when the glue dries, I can cut the moss around it really easily without it breaking apart. This is kind of just like almost gluing the moss together. So I'm just going to put that glue in there and then go around the letter as well. And this will all dry clear and you won't see it because it's on the back of the letter, so you don't need to worry about being totally perfect with a project like this. So when you have glue around the perimeter of your letter, I'm working on a piece of wax paper here, and I'm going to just fold the wax paper. And the wax paper is going to prevent this letter, any of the loose glue, from sticking to it. So when it's dry, it'll peel off really nicely. When I have this ready to go, I'm just going to put this under a stack of books. Let it dry for a little bit, and then you can remove it and actually let it air dry in the open. And here I have one that's been under there, so it's really nice and flat. You can see it's completely adhered, and all that glue is on around the edge. And on my cutting surface here with a craft blade, I'm just going to cut the moss off. And that glue just helps you get a really clean edge around the letter. So you just continue to go around until you've cut out all that moss. You can flip it over and kind of rub it around to make the edge look nice. Make sure it's cutting out properly. And then once it's all cut out, it's going to look like this. And you can see that the insides of the B are cut out, and it's nice and neat around on the back. So before I put this aside, I'm going to wire it. And I have a piece of 20 gauge wire in green, and you're just going to insert it into the top of your letter, bring it down, take your end, bring it back up, and you're essentially creating a way to hang the letter. So you can see now it's pretty sturdy and hanging. So I'm just going to take this wire, create a kind of loop at the top by just twisting it. Now that I've wired my bee, I'm just going to set that aside and start working on my wreath. And here is a 10-inch grapevine wreath. You can see it's really natural. It's just basically twigs wrapped in a circle. I'm going to find an area in the wreath where it's kind of a nice place to put a chunk of moss. So I think right there looks pretty good. Now we're going to use clump moss, which is a thicker, chunkier moss. And you can see here, I'm kind of doing the same thing that I did with that sheet moss, breaking off any of that excess dirt that's on the bottom. Kind of rubbing it with my hands and squishing it together. And I'm going to create this sort of little grassy knoll on the bottom of my wreath. So once that's ready like that, we're going to use a similar technique to the way we glued the moss onto the letter by using a lot of tacky glue. So I'm just going to let this drip right from the bottle. Get a nice amount on there, and then with the paintbrush or your fingers, smear it all around, kind of getting it into the whole bottom area of your moss. When you have it covered pretty well with glue, I'm just going to hold my wreath up and position the moss in the center. I'll turn it around and just push it into the twigs, making sure you have a front and a back of the wreath. So you can see that this side it's kind of facing out, where the back side, where it would go against a wall, maybe it doesn't look so great, but we only care about the front. So that needs to dry. So you can just put that aside. Good to lay it on a piece of scrap paper in case any glue drips from it. Place that aside. And now we're going to make some embellishments. And what we're going to be embellishing with are these really cute spun cotton mushrooms. And they come in just a white little mushroom shape. They come in all different sizes. And these we're going to paint so that we can have them growing in our little grassy knoll. So the first thing I'm going to do is with the hot glue, squirt a little bit of glue into that hole that's on the bottom of the mushroom and insert a piece of floral wire, same floral wire that I threaded my letter with. While that's drying, I'm just going to cut about 3 inches down with wire clippers so that I basically have a mushroom on a stem. This also helps with painting the mushroom so you're not holding the little mushroom in your fingers and getting paint everywhere. So for painting, I have 3 different kind of color mushroom, natural mushroom tones. And I like to start with my lightest color. And while holding the mushroom and my brush, I'm just going to paint underneath the little guy. And these don't have to be perfect because they are natural. Paint a little bit underneath. And then I don't even like to clean off my brush, but go to the next color, which is a little bit darker, and do the cap. And I don't clean off my brush because if there's a little bit of that paint on it and it gets a little smear in the top, it's fine because mushrooms are not perfect and they will have those types of imperfections. So cover your cap, and then again go right into kind of like a medium toned brown and just go around the edge just to give it a little more like depth and character there. You can just kind of blend it. So once you have that last touch of paint on, you can set that aside. And you want to make about a half dozen for both wreaths. And you can see here in all different sizes, I have a little collection of mushrooms. And these are ready to embellish my wreath. So here's my wreath. My moss is dry. My letter is ready. And the first thing I'm going to do here is attach my letter. And to do so, you can see I just threaded that wire in the top of the wreath. You want to make sure it's centered, hanging nicely in the middle, just like that. And then hold it in place and twist the wire around those grapevines. And you can kind of just stick it in. The wire blends in to the wreath so you don't even notice that it's there. Make sure it's just secure. And then you can always bend it to position it better. You see, so now I have the letter over the little grassy knoll, and I simply will embellish it by inserting my mushrooms. You can just add a couple here and there. You might hit the wreath while you're sticking it in, but just move your wire around until you've gone all the way through. And if there's any wires that are sticking out on the bottom, you can always shorten them by just snipping them. So you can just go around and clip them. And then you have a rustic wreath that's perfect for the entryway to your wedding.